Welcome everyone to HIUS530. I'm Corwin Parker. Behind me is the Washington, D.C. temple of the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints. It is representative of the Mormon thrust from the fringes of American Christian society to at least a debatable modernist institution. The LDS Church, in turn, provided a backdrop in which the conflict between modernism and fundamentalism could be analyzed through the practice of plural marriage. In 1886, LDS President John Taylor produced a revelation that said, in part, "Thus saith the Lord, all commandments that I give must be obeyed by those calling themselves by my name, unless they are revoked by me or by my authority. And how can I revoke an everlasting covenant? For I, the Lord, am everlasting, and my everlasting covenants cannot be abrogated nor done away with, but they stand forever." For John Taylor, this revelatory experience was transformative. Before this event, Taylor had tried to find ways to comply with anti-Mormon laws, but after the revelation, he took a different stance in which he engaged in the 16th marriage after the passage of the Moral Anti-Bigamy Act, thus choosing for the first time in his life to specifically violate federal laws on polygamy and unlawful cohabitation. Mormon inventor and philanthropist Nathaniel Baldwin played a pivotal role in enabling a growing awareness of the 1886 revelation amongst potential believers of plural marriage from about 1921 to 1925, when a nucleus of such families formed through an association and employment at Baldwin's radio factory in East Mill Creek, Utah. Foster and Watson assert if the early days of what became known in the 1940s as fundamentalist Mormonism can be compared to the spread of a wildfire, then the initial flame began at Baldwin's Sparks That Truly Caught factory. Without Baldwin's patronage, the community might have developed differently. These converts forged bonds and made permanent ties through shared religious convictions and new marriages between families. The LDS Church excommunicated such believers when their involvement with new plural marriages was discovered. The descendants of this Baldwin nucleus remain at the core of most fundamentalist Mormon communities today. Foster and Watson found the spread of fundamentalist literature became intolerable for LDS church leaders because by the 1920s, they had been struggling for 40 years to persuade a doubtful nation that its efforts to end polygamy were genuine. Simultaneously, the church initiated cooperation with the government for surveillance and prosecution of polygamists and also introduced a compulsory loyalty oath for any church members whose actions or sympathies might be suspect. Further, the church gave behind-the-scenes encouragement to the mostly Mormon Utah State Legislature to pass anti-polygamy legislation. In 1935, the Utah State Legislature passed House Bill No. 124, which elevated punishment for unlawful cohabitation from a misdemeanor to a felony. To avoid arrest, a sect of fundamentalists relocated to Short Creek, an isolated desert refuge along the Utah-Arizona border. After nearly a decade of surveillance and intelligence gathering, in the early morning hours of Tuesday, March 7, 1944, combined federal, state, and local law enforcement officers simultaneously pounded on the doors of polygamist homes throughout the Salt Lake City area and in Short Creek. Officers had already cut electricity to each home according to their well-prepared joint raid plan. A few fundamentalists evaded escape, and there appears to be a conspiratorial effort to assist fugitives. Ultimately, law enforcement arrested 34 men and 12 women, including all members of the priesthood council, for involvement in plural marriage, with federal charges filed against 20 of them. Time magazine announced it was the biggest raid on polygamists since the Orthodox Mormon Church officially outlawed plural marriage in 1890. On May 20, 1944, 15 of the 46 originally arrested were convicted and sentenced to serve 1 to 5 years in the Utah State Penitentiary. They immediately filed appeals and remained free on bond. After researching the cases, historian and constitutional attorney Ken Driggs stated, "Today, allegation of conspiracy is beyond ridiculous, but the fact prosecutors made the argument in 1944 probably is indicative of how much hostility was directed at fundamentalists." In May 1945, after losing appeals, the 15 convicted men began their 1 to 5 year sentences in the Utah State Penitentiary. As religious men, they conducted themselves as model prisoners and labored admirably in their prison work assignments. Once again, according to Foster and Watson, several important developments came from this raid and its aftermath. First, the community of polygamists gradually became known as fundamentalists or fundamentalist Mormons after their arrests. 2, The 1944 raid did not end plural marriage as predicted, and none of the men who served time ever gave up their belief in or practice of plural marriage. 3. The community grew and adherents became more staunch in their beliefs. 4. Those sentenced to prison were considered religious martyrs. 5. The community became more reclusive, going underground for at least 2 generations. And 6. Internal division over authority, doctrine, and ideology emerged among the men while in prison, with some separating over disagreement with priesthood council leadership. Additionally, the saga would not be over, as a raid of an even larger scope would be conducted on Short Creek in 1953. The struggle between modernist Mormons and mainstream governmental institutions versus the fundamentalist would continue to rage on. Thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking with you again.